That's what I'm talking about. That last 30 minutes is disruption on steroids. The way he thinks, the way he acts. This isn't a talk. This guy lives this every single day, 7 days a week. Heath, thank you so much again for sharing your thoughts on all of that. It's my pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Dr. Jake Carriere. Jake got an interesting story. Jake graduated 18 months ago. I met Jake in 2016. First time I met him. We had a meeting shortly thereafter. About 45 minutes in the meeting, I said, wow, this guy thinks differently. He's got disruption on his brain. I remember calling and sending a text actually to Heesh, to Jeff Sumner and me and Quick, and I said, I found him. He's going to be the next one. He's only in first year right now, but he's coming. And boy, is this guy flying. It's been 18 months now, and we had Jake 6 months out last year at another talk, and here he is now 18 months out. He's on to his third practice, on his way to 13. Bone grafts, sinus lifts, producing dentistry at an unbelievable clip and level. And I want to stress again, he's 18 months since he graduated. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Jake Carriere.
Perfect. Good morning, everyone. Can everybody hear me okay at the back? All good? Perfect. So Dr. Shelburne is a hard man to follow. I told him yesterday to maybe tone it down a little bit, just bring it down. Just don't do as good of a job. That way make me look a little bit better. But apparently he didn't get the memo, but it's okay. But in all seriousness, it's a huge honor to be in front of you guys today and alongside some of the most influential speakers and dentists in the country. So it's a huge honor. I know that Vic's going to get a lot of thanks today. But Vic, thank you so much. You and your team for putting this on for us. And I know that the cost of the tickets are definitely not covering the cost of maybe the name tags. Maybe not much more than that. So huge thank you to Vic for that as well. So when he asked me to come and speak at this event, first of all, I was honored. Second of all, I didn't really know what to say. I didn't know what he wanted me to say. And so Vic was just like, just tell your story. So I thought that's pretty easy. I don't have to memorize anything, so it's perfect. So without further ado, I'm just going to get right in, and I'm hoping that you guys can at least get 1 point out of this. So for me, how it all started, in dental school, I was always on Dental Town. So Dental Town's an online forum for dentists, and I'm on it still every day. I get a lot of clinical and business management tips from Dental Town. And here on Dental Town, I found Breakaway Practice Seminars, which is a practice management seminar in San Antonio where they teach an advanced startup seminar, which I convinced a few of my friends to come with me to. And there I kind of learned the ins and outs of how to find a startup, how to manage the startup, and how to staff, and kind of all the ins and outs of doing startups. So knowing me and my personality, I figured, okay, well, I'm going to jump into this with both feet. Let's do a startup after graduation. I thought I had it all figured out. But then I realized, where am I going to do this? How am I going to find a startup location? And you have to ask yourself, in my opinion, 3 main questions before you do a startup. I get a lot of new grads and dental students ask me questions, and I always tell them, you haven't asked yourself the most important questions, which are, where do you want to live? Is the location a drivable distance from where you want to live? And is it a good location to open up a dental office? These seem pretty basic, but as mentioned, a lot of people don't ask themselves these questions before considering everything else. So I did a quick Google search. I figured out kind of where I wanted to live, looked at surrounding communities, quick Google search, found the dentists in the area, how many there were. Cross-reference that with the RCDSO Find a Dentist website, where you could actually search up towns and dentists and look how many dentists are there, when they graduated, Canadian census to figure out, is the population growing? Are there enough people there for dentists? use Google My Maps, so I plotted the points on the maps. Those are the dentists in the area. I export the file. By the way, I know I'm going fast, but this will all be on YouTube apparently, so you could all watch this after. Exported the file to Google Earth Pro, and as you can see there, you have a very, very clear visual representation of where the offices are in relation to each other and in relation to the highways, to the residential areas, to the commercial plazas. So it's a very clear representation. You have your dentist to population ratio already because you found it through the census and through your Google search. And I look for pockets of high demand. So I'm not looking at just the dentist to population ratio. I'm looking at pockets. So as you can see on that map there on the right side, do you see that little blue point? So that was supposed to be my initial startup location in a commercial plaza. All that sand around there is all houses right now. It's the only office on that side of the town, away from all the other dental offices. So the dentist to population ratio doesn't really matter as much anymore because you kind of have your own little town in that area. That's all well and good, but that wasn't going to happen for another couple of years after I graduated, so I had to find a job. And for those of you looking for a job right now, what I did, I just reached out to the supply reps in the areas that I kind of figured I wanted to work in. And I just reached out to them, sent them my resume, introduced myself, and asked them if they knew anybody looking for jobs or looking for associates. And that's how I found my first 3 jobs. So I worked in 3 different offices in Toronto at the beginning. I worked for a little bit, and then, I realized that I didn't want to wait 2 years for this startup, and I wanted to do something before then. And that's when I started kind of weighing the risks and benefits of buying an office versus starting up. So in my opinion, I kind of wanted to buy an office that cash flows before considering a startup after thinking about it. Because the existing cash flow of the existing office can actually serve as a tax shelter and supporter of your other offices. In other words, you use the cash to cover the debts and the months with negative cash flow of your other offices. How do I find these offices? That was my next question. These are listed, all the dental broker kind of websites, the main ones. So I subscribed to all the dental brokers. And that way you get emails anytime a new office goes up for sale. That's actually how I found a couple of my practices through some of the brokers. Supply reps, again, reaching out to them. Sometimes they know what's for sale before the brokers. A really good point of advice I got is talk to the dental labs in the area that you're looking in. A lot of dentists don't do this. And I found that some of the labs, they knew who were selling before the supply reps and before the brokers. And you could also send letters and emails to dentists who you know are slowing down or retiring. And again, you know this by going to the RCDSO website and figure out when they graduate. So I bought my first office, Main Street Family Dental. It's in Shelburne, just north of Orangeville. Purchased it 5 months after graduation. Just a quick snapshot. So the new patient flow before I got in there about 10 to 20 new patients a month. And I've owned it for a year now. So we closed out the year. We're doing about 40 to 70 new patients a month. The production before I got there was about 1.05 million. And a year after being in there, it's about 1.65 million. This is not to be up here and say, look what I've done, because I know that there are many of you in this room who do more than that. But it's just to kind of show what's possible and how I got there and what tools and resources I needed to get there. So it all starts with, what do you look for in buying a practice? Because I was getting all these appraisals, but I had no idea how to read an appraisal. Nobody teaches you that. So through a lot of research of my own, I've kind of narrowed it down to 3 main things that I look for in appraisals. They're not the only things, but if these 3 things don't check out, then I'm pretty skeptical about the office. So the first point is cash flow and EBITDA. So EBITDA is your earnings before interest, taxes, depreciation, and amortization. I'll go into all these points pretty soon. Second one is hygiene as a percentage of revenue and the strength of the recall systems. And the third are procedures that you can add to increase production. So to explain cash flow and EBITDA, I'll go through a quick sample office. So let's say you got an office producing 1.05 million. You got to collect what you produce, or else it doesn't matter. So collections are $1 million. So your collection rate is 95%. Your overhead, so money going out, cost of running the business, 60%. 60% of $1 million, $600,000 are your expenses going out. As a really quick aside, the two main ways to decrease overhead, since we're talking about it, are decreasing your expenses and increasing your production and efficiency. Ideally, a combination of both is best, but I find that sometimes you have to increase your expenses in order to increase your production and efficiency. An example of that, so I work with 2 assistants always. I always have 2 assistants just for me, and that allows us to stagger our schedule so that while I'm finishing up in an operatory with 1 patient, and I have my first assistant, my second one is already getting the next patient, sitting him down, reading him consent, letting him know what we're going to be doing. That way, I pop out of this room, that first assistant takes the patient to the front desk, turns over the room, but I'm already in the other room. So it's a good way of, it almost doubles my production with less stress, less turnover time, and it just goes to show that it's not always about cutting costs to increase your efficiencies and to decrease your overhead. So your cash flow, you got your $1 million of collections. You have to take away your expenses, $600,000, leaves you with $400,000 of cash flow. That's what cash flow is, because nobody told me what cash flow is. It sounds very basic, but if you ask people, a lot of people wouldn't be able to tell you what it is. EBITDA, so that's your profitability of your business. So basically, that's the money left over in your business after paying everything, which are your expenses, and every one, because you got to pay the dentist because we have to live. So let's say in this $1 million office, your dentist production is $600,000. Your hygiene production is $400,000 to make your $1 million. Dentist got to take a salary, right? We got to live. So 40% of $600,000, just like you're an associate, $240,000. Now your EBITDA, take your cash flow, and you take away the money that you have to pay to the dentist, even if it's yourself, $160,000 of EBITDA. So that's the difference between cash flow and EBITDA. Looking at that office, that seems like a pretty good number. But I quickly realized that you got to pay off the business loan as well. You have to pay off the office. Got to pay for it somehow. So generally, that's over 10 to 12 years, usually at prime minus a quarter. Let's say for this office, you pay for $1.5 million. Your loan payments per month would be about $13,000. And that's just a website, how to calculate debts. It's pretty depressing. So loan payments, that's $13,000 a month. Your monthly profit, your EBITDA, is just over $13,000. That means you only have about $417 of profit per month if you buy this office after paying off everything, everyone in your loans. Starts to sound a bit more bleak now. So it's about $5,000 a year. Taking your salary, but it's still $5,000 a year. It's not very much. So that just goes to show you need a really solid business plan, especially in today's market of dental practices, in order to be successful. Most of the time, that means having a dedicated on-site owner, such as yourself, and or a like-minded business partner or associate that's in the office growing it with you. Generally, that's what it needs to bring the office to the next level. And again, you're also taking your 40% salary, so you could eat something else other than rice and water. Good news, after the loan's paid off, you'll have the money that you would pay for the loan, it now goes to the business profits every month after however long it takes for you to pay off the office. So getting into hygiene, so hygiene percentage. For this office, this $1 million office that I'm talking about, let's say, like I said, your hygiene production is $400,000. your hygiene percentage is 40% of a million. The industry average is around 30 to 35%. So this office is a little bit over. I like seeing that personally when I'm looking at offices. I like seeing a higher percentage of hygiene revenue. Generally, that means that they either have a pretty decent recall system in place, less headaches for you coming in and having to develop one, or the dentistry department is maybe underperforming a little bit. And it would be pretty easy for you to get in there and work off the hygiene and actually diagnose a bit more dentistry. Obviously, we're not diagnosing what's not necessary, but there just might be a lot of dentistry that's being watched at this office instead of actually being proactive. Procedures that could be added, pretty self-explanatory. I found that the procedures that were the best for my buck in my offices were oral surgery and implants, endo, crown and bridge, and just having the mental flexibility and capacity in order to step on the gas when needed, meaning you're willing to do quadrant dentistry, you're willing to do comprehensive treatment plans, half-mouth dentistry, full-mouth dentistry, whatever the patient wants, if you have time, of course, and having that capacity to offer same-day treatment as well, which again, coming back to the two-assistant thing, that really helps me do same-day treatment. A few courses that I found they're helpful for oral surgery and implants. The first one is called a Dental Development Seminars week-long extraction course in Guatemala. One of them is onlineoralsurgery.com. By the way, if anybody has any questions about any of these or is wondering what course it is, just send me an email. I'll have it at the end, and I'll tell you exactly where to find it. So onlineoralsurgery.com is a subscription-based website. An oral surgeon runs it. He has a loop camera, and he does oral surgery procedures, and you get to watch him. And I learned so much from just doing that. Dr. Neki Jamal has a third molar course. He usually goes in Vancouver or Toronto. I haven't taken it personally, but I've heard that is really good. It's a 3D model, and you get to cut out wisdom teeth out of the 3D printed models. Dr. Steve Diana has a great implant course in Georgetown. That's where I took my implant course. Very affordable way to get into implants, and you'll place pretty simple ones after the course pretty easily if you're confident enough. Dr. Mian Kwek is in the room today, so I shadowed him when I was in dental school, and that completely changed my mindset on everything in terms of surgery as well, but everything really. And just watching him work, watching somebody who's better at you work, you get so much out of it. And again, the shadowing part, so I shadowed many people in this room actually, Dr. Sumner, Dr. Kwek, Dr. Shergan, and it just brings you to another level. And I have people shadowing me now too, so if anybody would like to shadow, just send me an email, let me know. I know a couple of you in this room already have. This was in Guatemala at my week-long extraction course. My buddy Nate Miskin's on the left-hand side there. And that gentleman in the middle who looks thrilled to be around us, he was actually the Guatemalan, I believe he was the health minister of Guatemala. So he was pretty high up in Guatemala. He brought his son over to our clinic with a security escort and a bunch of dentists, and he needed his wisdom teeth out. He needed 4 impacted wisdom teeth out. So the course director heard about these 2 hotshot dentists who were taking out all the wisdom teeth all week long. And he was like, oh, why don't you guys go and take the wisdom teeth out? And so we took out his son's wisdom teeth while he was watching us with that face, while other dentists were watching us. And keep in mind, we had only graduated a month ago at this point. So everybody was looking at us like we were the teachers, and it was a very nerve-wracking experience, but you come out of it with much more knowledge and much more kind of courage than you did before. This nice-looking room was in the Philippines, where I went on a dental mission trip. My buddy Christian and I, those are our 2 dental chairs that we worked on. And in that particular setting, we saw around 25 to 30 patients in an afternoon, so in a couple hours. So again, it's backwoods dentistry, and you come back, and suction is a luxury. So for endo, I found that for the Dentsply reps that are here, every time I switched over to Wave 1 files, and it just decreased my endo time, increased my endo efficiencies. Dr. Mark Olson has an endo course in Vancouver. Again, I haven't taken it, but I've heard that it's really worth going to. A lot of dentists from the States actually will even travel to Canada to get that course. Crown and Bridge, my friend, Dr. Jeff Sumner. So watching him work in Kitchener, again, completely elevated my knowledge and just took me to the next level in terms of understanding with Crown and Bridge. So I know Dr. Shergan already mentioned the Dentistry Academy, and I'm not here to promote it or anything, but I'm just telling you to build your network of like-minded professionals and friends. I think that's really important in dentistry especially, because I know that dentistry can be quite lonely at times. We're alone in the mouth, and our assistant wants to go home, and it can get lonely sometimes. So having a group of like-minded friends is really important. And like the quote says, show me your friends and I'll show you your future. And again, that's why I like interacting with the guys from Dentistry Academy and from Anatomy Management as well. They're great friends of mine, and I learn so much from them every day. Now that I bought, my first office 5 months out, I realized that, like you said before, remember the numbers were looking pretty bad, right? Remember that $400 a month? So that was around my situation. We had to produce a certain number in order to actually make a profit, and the number was high. There's a lot of pressure. So I got to figure out, how do I build this practice? And these were my main practice builders, and a lot of these will seem like common sense, but the first one is just treating your staff really, really well. So I always tell my staff, whenever they do something right, I acknowledge them. Say, hey, I noticed you did that. Very good job. Thank you so much for that. Or if we run a little bit behind or we have to stay a little late, I tell them, thank you so much. I really appreciate you staying late. I know that you want to go home, but thank you for staying here with me. Just simple thank yous, simple appreciation. It goes a long way. I do care calls for every patient who gets any procedure done in my office. It's a filling, extraction, anything. So I call the patient from my cell phone the day of or the day after, and I'm just checking to see if everything's okay after the appointment. Same with new patient calls. So I look at my schedule ahead of time. I see what new patients are on the schedule, and I will personally call them just to introduce myself and to tell them what's going to be happening in the first appointment and to ask if they have any questions. My new patient no-show rate is virtually zero now, because it's hard to no-show a dentist who called you personally. Pre-treatment calls for big cases. I know it sounds like I'm on the phone all day long, but this only takes me like 10, 15 minutes a day. That's all it takes. Most people don't even answer. You leave a message, and the other maybe 40% who answer, most of them are laughing because they're saying, why is my dentist calling me? But it doesn't take me very long every day. Big cases, before a big case, I call them, again, ask them if they have any questions. No-show rate for big cases decreases dramatically. Google RateMD reviews. So if you do those first 4 things, it will be much easier to get Google and RateMD reviews. You could ask your patient. We have a software called Recall Max where it sends every patient who gets an appointment a link to leave you a Google review, only if they're happy, of course. If they're not, don't do it. But that dramatically increased our Google reviews. Putting yourself out there. Even if you're an associate, it doesn't matter. Owner, associate, anybody. We had an event in Shelburne recently, free skate for our patients, free public skate, just to thank them. It's just thank you. We realized that without you guys, why are we here? We had no reason to be here. So it's just a quick thank you to the patients. Painless injections, relatively speaking, of course, but anything that you can do to make the injection as comfortable as possible will really go a long way with patients. Even though that's all good, every single day I have to still face the biggest challenges I face as a new grad and owner, which are treatment presentation skills and clinical skills and efficiencies. Now with treatment presentation, it's so important because you can be the best dentist ever, have the best hands, but if your treatment presentation's bad, you're not going to be able to show anybody. So a few things that I've noticed with treatment presentation is to sit down at the level of the patients and be relaxed. Instead of standing over them, sit down at their level. I'll even put my chair down lower than them so they're above me, because patients can definitely sense fear and uncertainty. So whatever you're going to say with confidence. I don't sell treatment. I'm very upfront with them. I tell them what their options are. I tell them what I'd recommend. I let them choose. I always tell them, or most of the time I'll tell them, you could ask 10 different dentists, you'll probably get 10 different answers. All I can do is recommend what I would do if I were you, or if you were somebody that I cared about, like my mom or brother or whoever they are. And whenever you're ready, we'll be ready for you. It just goes to show them you're not desperate to get their treatment. Intraoral cameras, I think everybody should have one in every room. Even if you're an associate, go buy one. I have a really cheap one listed there. It's a mouthwatch camera. There's cheaper ones on eBay and Amazon. They're great. Because if you tell a patient, hey, you got a crack in your filling, maybe they won't believe you or they won't sense the urgency. But you show them a picture like that, most of the time you don't even have to say anything. They'll be like, how do I fix that? Well, first, they mostly say, that's my tooth. Second, mostly they say, how do we fix this? So now you're co-diagnosing. It's a conversation now. SureFill STR Flowable, great product. I love that. I use it on the base of every filling, basically. It's a bulk fill flowable. It goes up to 4 millimeters, looks great on x-rays, great product. So you put it at the base, you wait about 10 seconds, it kind of levels off into all the irregularities. That way you don't have to use an Explorer to push it around. So it increases efficiency, decreases your restorative times. I love these burrs, so they're finishing burrs. I use them to take down occlusion and to polish at the same time. So it's a two-step thing, but in one step, so it saves you a lot of time there. Dr. Jeff Sumner introduced me to the 3M retraction paste, which I love. I don't pack cord anymore, I don't have to. So this, you just squirt it into the sulcus around a crown prep, stops bleeding in its tracks, and retracts all the tissues away. Much easier. I use bite blocks on everybody, because I find that patients, if they're going to close at the worst possible time. So they're going to close when you're doing your bonding step or something like that. So this just takes away some stress. If you try to take my spade elevator away from me, you're going to have to pry it out of my hands. I love this thing. I use it in the place of a 301 or like a 77R or 46R. And the spade tip really allows you to get into the PDL space between the tooth and bone and wedge the tooth out. Great product. I don't get any kickbacks by this, by the way. So apical retention forceps, those just slide a lot more apical to the tooth, and they have a really good grip on them. Who here has tried to take out an anterior tooth, try to twist it, but it just keeps slipping and sliding? It's got to be more than that. It's not just me, but yeah, you, perfect. I always question everything that led me up to that moment when I'm doing it. With these, never slip, never slips. I use an upper universal, a lower universal, and a lower anterior. That's all I do. Just keep it simple. This general advice is not really for you. It's just take it with a grain of salt. This is just what I live by. And again, I'm not preaching to you, but it's just, so for your first job, be flexible with location. That's important, live within your means, because as dentists, we're lucky that we can be pretty successful financially, more than most jobs, but that doesn't mean anything if you're spending it all, or if your expenses are matching or exceeding your income. So you really have to be careful, especially the new grads. You're going to get out there and start making money. Be careful. Delay a house purchase until your student loans are paid off, just so you're not as tied up. Don't buy a fancy car until you can pay for it in cash. Again, that's just living within your means. Buy a practice before buying a house. If you buy a house, you can pigeonhole yourself into a specific location, and the practice can actually pay for your house. Healthy work-life balance, I'm still working on that, but I do a lot of CE trips with my friends and everything, so it just breaks up the monotony of dentistry. It is something to look forward to every 1 to 3 months or so. It's just something nice. Bottom line, if you're not having fun, I'd say do something different. Change something. Again, we're so lucky we have the power, we have the freedom to change a lot of things in our lives in terms of our jobs. So I'm going to round it out by saying the 3 main questions most people don't ask themselves. Where do you want to live? Is the location or job a drivable distance from where you want to live? Is it a good location to open up or work in a dental office? After asking myself these questions, this is what made sense for me. So these are my 3 offices. As you can see, there's a theme there. For me, it made sense, close to where I want to live. They're a drivable distance from where I want to live and from each other, so I could travel between them no problem. If I want to just do surgery, I can do that. I could be the surgeon of the offices, right? And so that is what made sense to me, and that's my story, and I hope you got at least something out of it. Thank you so much.